Welcome back to Roman Catholic Media and a new series, Questions for the Rector. In this episode, we're going to be asking His Excellency Bishop Donald Sanborn, Rector of Most Holy Trinity Seminary, about a recent speech from Archbishop Viganò. And Your Excellency, what did you think of this recent speech that he gave to a resistance conference?
Well, which he did not give because they canceled him. I was very, very encouraged by it, actually. It's the first time that I saw anyone in the Novus Ordo hierarchy saying what we are saying. He very clearly gave the argument that Bergoglio, that Bergoglio had a defect of consent when he was elected, in such a way that he could not receive the power of Christ to rule the church. I am paraphrasing him, but he gave all of the logic that we give for concluding that he is not the Pope. I would say he was a little imprecise in saying the election was invalid. We would not say that. It's just his consent was invalid, and he does say that. And that is key to the problem. Most of the time, the problem of Bergoglio is addressed from the point of view of his personal sin of heresy, that he is a heretic. And that is fraught with problems because there has never been any instruction book in canon law or anything else that tells us what to do in the case of a heretical pope. Secondly, the problem is not that he is a personal heretic, even if there were no other problem about it. That is not the central problem of the Church. The central problem of the Church is that he and his Vatican II so-called Pope predecessors have been imposing upon us a false religion, and as he says, this is an attempt to overthrow the Church. This goes back to Vatican II, he says. This idea of transforming the Church. And that is the problem. It's the first time I've seen any Novus Ordo cleric hit the nail on the head as the central problem that we're facing.
Something else that we're hearing for the first time from a Novus Ordo cleric is this talk about intention and marriage, and that may be something that makes sense to some of the people who watch the speech, but it was particularly surprising to you, Your Excellency. Why was that?
Because he used an image or an example that Father Ricosa originally used with regard to the problem of consent to the election. And that is that if someone were coming down the aisle to marry a woman simply for her money, and had no intention to receive the sacrament of matrimony, and had the full intention of leaving her as soon as he got the money. He didn't go into all the explicits that I'm saying, but I'm giving his example. That would be an invalid marriage in fact, but before the Church that would be valid because he hid his intention. See, so that is what the thesis is saying, that because of defect of intention, a defect of consent, in other words, that he's not consenting to rule the Church as it ought to be ruled by a Roman pontiff, but rather he was consenting to, quote unquote, rule the Church in order to transform it into something modernist. That is a defect of intention and therefore a defect of consent. He's not consenting to what he is elected to do. In fact, he's not the Pope, but before the Church, that is, until his election and his defect of consent is declared by the Church, nonetheless, that election remains intact. Now, Archbishop Viganò did not get to that point. He said something about the invalidity of the election. We would not say that. But I do think that he is reading what we're saying, because I don't think that he would easily come up with that example. And just other things that he said, even the very idea of defect of consent. it took me years to figure that out. I've been ordained for over 48 years. It took me years to figure that out. And it took a long time for all of the sedevacantist priests to analyze the situation, which is very theologically delicate in the sense that it requires a lot of distinctions. So
he's on a bit of a speed track.
I think that he's been reading what we're saying, or perhaps what the Italian priests are saying, which is the same thing. And I was encouraged to see that, and that he said that, which places the problem exactly where it is, and that is his general intention to destroy the church from within, and that it goes back to Vatican II. I was a little afraid when I was listening to him that he would say that Benedict was a wonderful pope and John Paul II was a wonderful pope. I thought, oh, please, no. But at the end, he said, this goes back to Vatican II. Very important point. It all started with Vatican II. It started with the evil intention of John the 23rd, who was a modernist during his whole life, to transform the church into a modernist ecumenical church of no dogmas and simply humanitarianism, which is exactly what we have with Bergoglio. He is incapable of saying anything pious. All he talks about is climate change and wars and various other problems of humanity. And he's trying to make the world a better place to live in. See, that's the purpose of the Catholic Church.
Now, you talked about him using some of the logic, maybe even possibly reading Father Ricosa's work, but he studiously avoided using the word sedevacantist or anything even remotely close to that. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, he certainly gave all the logic of it. I think that he is a sedevacantist. And I think, however, because he was preparing this as a speech to recognize and resist people in the Catholic Identity Conference in Pittsburgh, he was supposed to speak by Zoom or by video, and they canceled him because he did give all the logic of sedevacantism, even though he did not come out and say Bergoglio is not the Pope. He did not say that, but you could only conclude it from what he said. He was explicit with all the logic, and I think that he thought perhaps if I say Bergoglio is not the Pope, it will be too much for these people to bear, and it would be better if they did the logic in their own minds from his own remarks and concluded themselves. I think so, because you can see that he's clearly thought this out. And there's no possible way that he could come to the conclusion that that man is still the Pope when he says that he has a defect of consent in receiving the papacy. You see, that it's just not possible. You see, and so I think that he's a convinced sedevacantist, in my opinion. I have no doubt about that.
So how does this harmonize with what you've seen of him over the years, beginning from when you first heard about him and he first started making these statements?
Well, I think just like all of us, he got on the train, and the train has many stops, meaning that you have an initial reaction to the horrors going on in the Catholic Church, and you have instinctive reactions, and then you start thinking and reading, and you do more research. And so, as I said, it's the train. The train makes many stops before you get to the final conclusion. This man can't be the Pope. And so I think he made a journey, because I've read all of his stuff, anything that he said, and I thought, he's on the right track, but there's still a few things he needs to figure out. And I'm glad he figured them out. I really am. I think that it's a breakthrough in a way to hear one person in the Novus Ordo hierarchy say what we are saying. That is a breakthrough. And I think it's very positive.
Now, you've seen other people, let's say, go on this journey before and potentially at the last minute decide not to get out at the stop because it's too scary. So what do you think will help keep him on the right journey, and what could prevent him potentially, stop him from?
I don't know. He's a mysterious person, and we don't even know where he lives, or I don't know. I would hope that he would become more public about Bergoglio not being the Pope and why he is not the Pope. I think he should be more public about its going back to Vatican II. I think he should address Vatican II. And I think he should say that all the popes since John the 23rd have not been true popes for the same reason as Bergoglio is not. That this intention to overthrow the Catholic Church from within, which is exactly what Pius X warned us about, St. Pius X, in his encyclical on modernism, that this was their plan. And this is what they did. And that's why they can't be true popes, because they have this evil, wicked intention. That's what I hope he will say and do. I hope also that he will try to convince cardinals. Now, there's 5 cardinals that are objecting to the synod, so they have some Catholicism in them, we might say, that presented these dubia to Bergoglio, and he gave them a gobbledygook answer first, and then they asked for a yes or no answer, which was perfectly normal, and he didn't answer it, which is a slap in the face to them. The cardinals are key in this, and I would hope that he would convince them to come together and elect a real Catholic Pope. It's the only way we're going to get out of this problem in the Church. The only way. Talking will do no good. Doing what we do, that is saying Mass for small groups around the country and in the world, that's only a stopgap measure. It will not solve the problem in the Church. And the problem in the Church must be solved where it began, and that is in the election of someone who is a true Pope and not some phony Pope with an evil intention.
Well, if he's been reading Father Recossa, we can only hope he might be watching some YouTubes, Your Excellency. So I think that's a fairly clear exhortation and some helpful suggestions. And I think, too, it's just encouragement to those of us who've made similar journeys, obviously not at the same rank or prominence as a Novus Ordo cleric, but that it does take some time and you have to overcome a lot in order to draw these conclusions. So as you say, it's already quite a big thing that he's gotten to where he is now.
A big step in the right direction. Yes.
So we'll see what follows next.
Yes.
Thank you for your time, Your Excellency.
Not at all. Thank you.